if you put him in front of me and there was no one else around, and he had a name tag on that said Armie Hammer, and he introduced himself to me as Armie Hammer, I would still not know who the fuck he was.
Welcome to Feminist Frequency Radio. This is episode 35, and I'm your host, Anita Sarkeesian. Today, I'm joined by my fellow proletariats, Ebony Astor.
Proletariats?
And Carolyn Fettit.
Yeah.
I'm on theme today.
Yeah.
Girl, you better grant my status as the 1%.
Are you going to be a scab? Are you going to try to walk through the strike lines?
No,
Ebony?
because my helicopter is going to land me on the penthouse.
Okay.
Away from
Fair.
the lumpen proletariat.
All right.
This is the show that asks you to be critical of the media you love, or alternatively, we're the feminist killjoys coming for your media, depending on your perspective. In today's show, if you haven't guessed yet, we're going to dive into the new indie film, Sorry to Bother You. And as always, we'll finish the show out by each sharing a little something in What's Your Freak-Out? Exclusively for our fantastic backers, we've got a bonus segment. If you want access to our bonus segment and other fun perks, join our podcast community at d.rip/femfreak. Now on with the show.
All right.
What's up, y'all?
Hey.
What's up?
Ebony is really quiet today. It's a little disconcerting.
Yay. You doing okay, Ebony?
I'm just tired. I'm tired of
Sure.
being poor. I'm tired of the man. I'm tired of exploitation. I'm tired of it all.
I'm tired of the one thing I'm most tired of this morning in particular is all the resurgence. Again, I thought we'd had this conversation and I thought this was over, but the resurgence of homophobic jokes about Trump and Putin. Like,
girl, who you telling? Like, y'all, this is fucked up. It's fucked up when we do it. It's fucked up when they do it.
Mm-hmm. Like the New York Times tweeted a cartoon, an animated cartoon this morning. It's part of a series called Trump Bites. And the whole thing is like Trump as sort of as a teenage girlish figure in a bedroom watching Putin on TV or something. And then it goes into this whole like homoerotic fantasy where you end up seeing like there's a good like 20 seconds spent on their tongues just like twisting with each other. And then, like the whole, obviously the intended reaction is ew, 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 right? That's fucked up. Like,
yeah.
I hate Trump. We do not need, like, resorting to homophobic, quote-unquote, jokes, imagery, etc. in our efforts to knock him down a peg. It does more. It's damaging. It's not helpful because it reinforces, already oppressive ideas about homosexuality. It's so fucked up.
Gross.
Yeah.
That's fucked up. I mean...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm going back to bed.
Yeah. All right. Well, in better news, I can shift us now into some entertainment news. And the first story is kind of a good one. On last week's show, I wasn't there, but y'all did touch on how ScarJo had been pegged to star in a film called Rub and Tug about a biopic about an actual trans man who had been named Dante Texgill. And of course, thankfully, in response to this news about, a cisgender woman who is also one of the biggest movie stars in the world playing a trans man, there was a tremendous outcry on Twitter from trans people in particular, from, the LGBT community, I think more broadly, about how just how inappropriate that is and how we need to let trans people tell their own stories on screen and have those roles. And in the wake of that outcry, despite the incredible tone deafness of of the initial statement from her representatives, which was along the lines of, "Well, we invite you to contact the representatives of Jared Leto and Jeffrey Tambor, right, other cis actors."
I can't believe they had the nerve to say that shit.
She has now backed out of the role.
So, our good pal N.K. Jemisin had a real good tweet about this, being like, "It's interesting." Yeah,
you're paraphrasing.
I'm not even paraphrasing, but this is the general sentiment of it, which I guess is what paraphrasing means.
Yeah.
All right. Today's going to be a great day. But she was like, it was literally the day after or the day of when they announced that there'd be a Black Widow film. And everyone was like, what the hell? Why? Like, nobody wants a Black Widow film. Nobody likes this. And then all of a sudden, Scarlett Johansson announces that she's not going to be playing this character. Like, is that a coincidence? Sometimes.
Sure.
But it's a little close for comfort.
It is. And to me, like, I'm more concerned with just the results than, I'm just like glad that at this point, given the platform that social media allows us as trans people, that we were able to put some pressure on and to get this result.
Also, as Ebony pointed out, the person directing this film is the same dude that did Ghost in the Shell. So I don't even want him to be a part of a film about trans people.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, you already have proven that you can't be trusted with this.
Right.
Or anything, clearly.
Yeah.
I'm just in awe. If you listen back to last week's pop culture news versus this week's, I'm just in awe at how Carol was able to like quickly and articulately encapsulate this story. It took me how long? Like 20 minutes last week to explain what was going on. I should never be in charge of pop culture news.
No.
We're glad to have Carolyn back.
Yes,
we love the occasional rambly Ebony pop culture news segments.
Of course,
everything has its place.
Yeah. And I think to sort of continue along this theme, another good pop culture news story is that Pose. So Pose is a show that does it right. Here it is filled with trans actors playing trans roles. So in that sense, anyway, it does this the way that it tells trans stories the way that trans stories should be told on screen. We haven't talked about the show yet on on FFR,
but we will.
This upcoming Sunday is, I believe, the season finale, so we will be talking about Pose very soon. But great news is that Pose has been renewed for a second season. Yeah. So, hopeful. I am so hopeful that that the show is successful and that it helps to establish in Hollywood more broadly just the general notion and understanding that if you are casting a trans character, you should look to trans talent, look to trans actors. They are out there. They are varied. They are capable. There is a trans person for the role you are looking to cast.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I can't wait for the day when we have trans actors just playing characters.
Right. 100%.
Right? And they can play trans, there can be trans characters in worlds who just happen to be trans, but the story's not about that part of their identity.
Yes.
It could, maybe they're just really good at fishing, and then there's a story about someone who fishes, and they happen to be trans.
Yeah, you can't wait for that story, Anita. Yeah. A story that's just about someone who's really good at fishing.
I'm writing the screenplay right now, okay?
That's the kind of movie where at the end of the trailer, you would turn to me in the theater and go, oh my God, that looks so boring. What is it? They're just about fishing? Come on. And I would be like, oh my God, I can't wait to see this deep character study about
it was a love story, Caro. It could be. Maybe it's another movie about fish fucking.
Oh no!
Then Carolyn would really like it.
I mean, I don't know.
I will direct you all back to episode about Shape of Water.
Yes. Yeah.
In case Carolyn tries to backstep.
No. I just felt that you were being reductive in describing the film as about fish fucking.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna steal a line from Detroit. And Sorry to Bother You, which I thought was such a good line, where she says, "You're sidestepping more than the Temptations." Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'm applying that to you right now, Carol. Not that it really applies. I just really wanted to say that.
Yeah, no, I own my admiration for Shape of Water, and my yes, yeah, I do. I'm comfortable with it. I'm sitting with it.
What other news we got?
So, boy, here's a story. How about that Henry Cavill, folks?
Oh boy!
So Henry Cavill, of course, best known.
Keep it.
He of course plays.
He's best known for his mustache.
Right.
Sorry.
He's his digitally removed mustache in Justice League. Yeah, he plays Superman in the current spate of DC films, and he has a significant role in the new Mission Impossible film. But he was interviewed recently, and speaking to GQ Australia, the Superman actor, 35, said, there's something wonderful about a man chasing a woman. There's a traditional approach to that, which is nice. I think a woman should be wooed and chased, but maybe I'm old-fashioned for thinking that. Then he goes on. He added, this is where things get really dicey, it's very difficult to do that if there are certain rules in place. Because then it's like, well, I don't want to go up and talk to her because I'm going to be called a rapist or something. So you're like, forget it, I'm going to call an ex-girlfriend instead and then just go back to a relationship which never really worked. But it's way safer than casting myself into the fires of hell because I'm someone in the public eye. And if I go and flirt with someone, then who knows what's going to happen.
Do you know how many violins I have for this dude right now? Like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah. It's a really... I thought there were so many fascinating responses to it on Twitter from women. I think one of the sharpest and most like just illuminating was one, and I apologize that I don't immediately recall who it was, but I'll link it in the show notes. It was along the lines of, do men realize how scary it is to us as women that like a 35-year-old man can't seem to tell the difference between just like flirting, with a woman a little bit or, talking to her and like full on rape culture. Like, do they not understand how they're perpetuating rape culture with this like complete lack of understanding of that distinction?
Yeah.
And, so
I'm not even going to engage with the ludicrousness of Henry Cavill's faux naive, totally disingenuous. I don't know how to approach him in these things. I want to talk purely about how shitty do you have to feel as one of his ex-girlfriends right now when like you've gotten a recent call from your old, buddy Henry Cavill who's like, hey, let's hook up, let's get dinner, whatever, and you're thinking like, hey, maybe there was something there. Maybe we should get back together, whatever. But he's saying, publicly in a to a global audience, like, I'm only hitting up, women I used to hit because I don't have a choice, right? Like, the dude just tells himself he's so garbage.
And as if, like, those women can't also, okay, he says the stupid shit, but hypothetically speaking, let's say he is abusive and shitty. Like, he could be abusive and shitty to his exes, too. Like, it's as if his exes can't come forward and be like, this guy is a piece of shit.
Right.
And I'm not saying that he is. I'm just saying that logic is so fucking dumb. And also, why would you let that come out of your mouth in a public place? Like, how dumb do you have to be to say something like that? Like,
he's real dumb. Like, he clearly is real dumb,
It is interesting. That in that comment he says, I don't want to be cast into the fires of hell for like
yeah, you're about to be,
and
dude.
it's like, yeah, what you're saying is, do you have any idea how clueless what you're saying is?
Totally. Terry Crews on Twitter said, I used to think this way, and my wife like repeatedly told me that was wrong and like educated me on this process. And I feel like that's like the one. I don't know if this is a perk, but like. Listening to being able to expose this kind of mentality and thinking and using it as a teachable moment for other folks can be really useful because they're like, oh shit, I thought that too. And I just watched all these people be like, what is wrong with you? The other side of it is like how many people are not exposed to feminists and allies being like, hey, this isn't okay. Let's talk about why it's okay. And they're just like, yeah, totally, man. That's how I feel too. And you're like, oh,
yeah.
boy.
And it's fucked up because his idea that, completely sincere men are being caught up in the hellscape of Me Too, right? And it's like, so that means Henry Cavill is hearing the stories of these people who have been, abused, threatened, harassed, etc. And instead of thinking like, wow, it's fucked up that those people experience that, is thinking, oh, that actually doesn't sound so bad. Like these men that you accuse are entirely innocent, and and it's like, what kind of wildly off reading do you have to hear these stories and be like, I could have done that myself. Like the problem is, so now I don't get to date in the way that I want to. I don't get to be Captain Caveman in the way God intended. Like, boy, bye. And also, but I love how you we started talking about like his disappearing mustache, like his CGI'd mustache from the DC movies, the Justice League movie. Do you think that's why he like spontaneously grew a beard in that Mission Impossible trailer that people are talking about? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, so real quick, there's a GIF, and I'll link to this in the show notes as well, because it is so beautiful and so mesmerizing. It's a little GIF from Mission Impossible Fallout of Henry Cavill like walking towards the camera in a really threatening way, and you see during the GIF like a beard basically like sprout in on his face, and
they need some new hair growth technology.
Yeah, that's pure masculinity.
Well,
just busting out of his pores. Anita.
I mean, it makes sense. He's like gearing up for a fight. He's obviously like he kind of.
Is it kind of like when animals take a dump before they run away from danger?
What
is it that?
I don't.
Wait, you don't know this? The flight or fight thing is like animals will like excrete all the fluids and all of the stuff in their body before they have to run away so that they are lighter.
Oh.
You didn't know this?
No, I mean, not really.
No, I didn't know this either.
But, well, there you go. Fun facts for y'all.
Fascinating
about
animal facts.
Yeah.
Well,
okay.
On that note.
So Phil just told me that I made that up. I really didn't. It's very true. Apparently you don't all read about trauma as much as I do. So there you go.
So sorry to bother you. I just want to talk a little bit about spoilers real quick before we get into the film itself, because I feel like we should, if we can, talk about non-spoilery stuff for a while and then get into the spoilery stuff.
Yeah.
Because this is a film that more so than like almost any other film you can think of, it ends up going places that, you will not see coming. It's not like... It has some unpredictable elements.
Give it a bit.
So yeah, that's all.
Yes.
I mean,
totally.
Yeah.
We'll definitely throw up a spoiler warning when we shift into spoiler territory, which I'm sure will be immediately because we're bad with this shit.
We are.
But we'll definitely warn y'all because, or if you've already seen it, then, stick around for the whole thing. Okay, so we are going to be talking about the Oakland indie film Sorry to Bother You by Boots Riley, who you might know from the band The Coup, the hip-hop band out of Oakland, or maybe this is the first time you're ever hearing of him, so you've been missing out. Sorry to Bother You is a film that's very much rooted in Oakland, right? Which is a big conversation that's happening because there's another film that's coming out called Blindspotting. It's also rooted in Oakland, and it's kind of exciting as those of us who live in the Bay Area to see Oakland being represented. We saw it in Black Panther, it's kind of cool. So this movie is... I would say it's about capitalism and labor.
Absolutely.
I think, but it's
with elements, of course, of race. It's also, it's about race, but capitalism and labor. And I mean, as someone who's deeply concerned with labor and exploitation and the way that, billionaire CEOs don't pay their workers a living wage, the anger in this film around labor and labor, and the necessity of labor movements, boy, that just hit the spot for me. I was so thrilled to see those issues really dealt with on screen.
Yeah, and it has a real impressive cast, and everyone is so good in this movie. So you've got Ebony's favorite, Armie Hammer. Did you just forget his face constantly in the movie?
Listen. As I was watching this movie, and I was like, I gotta give it up. Carolyn recognized this dude's talent way before I did, and I enjoyed him in this movie so much, while at the same time knowing if you put him in front of me and there was no one else around, and he had a name tag on that said Armie Hammer, and he introduced himself to me as Armie Hammer, I would still not know who the fuck he was. I have an Armie Hammer face blindness that can't be fixed.
I wonder if there's a club that you can join for that. Specifically for Armie Hammer. Whatever. He's real pretty. I'd recognize him walking down the street for sure. But so whatever. Here we are.
Can I ask you a quick question, Anita?
Yeah.
So when the Twitter conversation about this film started sparking off, one of the promo images that was everywhere was the image of Detroit, played by Tessa Thompson, wearing these amazing earrings that say "murder, murder, murder, kill, kill, kill," right? And you saw that and were like, I need these in my life. I don't want nothing else. Somebody hook me up. You eventually got these earrings. Can I ask
originally,
you, once you saw the film, were you mad because you didn't know earrings were going to become like a bigger part of the film than maybe that promo image might have revealed?
I was already
because I was like,
it.
man, I wanted those earrings too. But then once I saw the movie, I was like, I want all of the earrings she wears in this film.
So what happened was that I tweeted the screen cap and was like, holy shit, how do I get these earrings? And Boots replied being like, oh, they were just made for the film. And then a month or two later, I got a message being like, they're up in the store, go buy them. And I was like, what? So if you go to the store, which we'll link, you can buy those earrings, but you can buy a bunch of the other ones in there. So there's ones that say, there's some that I'm like, I don't have the nerve to wear them, but there's ones that say, tell Homeland Security I'm the bomb.
Those are the ones I want.
Yeah, you can buy those ones, and you can buy ones that say "Sorry to bother you." They've got some good merch. So, and I was like, I never buy things before a film. Like, I'm not a part of a fandom until I'm like, or you know, like people. I've seen people get tattoos for games before that they've even played the game. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? But so this is the first time I've ever bought a thing for a film before I saw it and knew that I liked the film. So I was really relieved that I didn't hate Detroit's character and that like I actually like these earrings that I bought. But anyways, we just spent way too much time talking about earrings.
Yeah, so let's talk a bit about the premise of the film. You have it's Lakeith Stanfield, I think is the actor's name, playing a young man in Oakland named Cassius Green. Get it? Cassius Green. Thanks, Karen. Yeah, I just want to make sure that doesn't fly over anyone's heads. And, he doesn't have a job. He lives in his uncle's garage with his girlfriend, Detroit, Tessa Thompson. Early on in the film, you see on the TV this ad for this thing called Worry Free, which is this new, labor system of which Armie Hammer's character is like the CEO, the billionaire, owner, creator. And it's this thing where basically people just sign up essentially to live in, a work prison, but they never have to worry about paying the bills again. And to me, there was something about that was so powerful because it's how fucked up is capitalism that for a moment even looking at that, I'd be like, oh yeah, because worrying about money and financial precarity is the worst fucking thing to constantly think about and worry about. That I actually got why somebody might find that attractive.
Yeah.
But it's prison. I mean, you're signing away your freedom, your life. So yeah.
Yeah, and
it's explicitly linked to prison, right? Because when Terry Crews, who plays Cash's uncle, reveals the depths of his financial precariousness and to Cash's, he says, "Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to go sign up for Worry Free," right? And he says specifically, it's 3 hots and a cot, which is what people say about prison.
Yep.
Yeah. I think that this film does a really, really great job at showing the allure and seduction of capitalism, while at the same time exposing how fucked up capitalism is. And I think that that's one of the magic parts of the film is that you see characters struggling, they're in poverty, they're working class, and you see them trying to get somewhere, which just means literally just get a job, just pay rent for your shitty ass apartment, keep your house that was probably in your family and maybe passed down to you potentially. But that when you do get a little bit of something, you want to hold on to it and you don't want to share it and you don't care about everyone else who was where you used to be. And I think that the way this movie does it is really smart and hilarious. So the thing about Sorry to Bother You is that there's a lot of magical realism intertwined in the film, which you can see in the trailer parts of it. And I love that because it allowed this film to go a little batshit nuts while also still having this deep anti-capitalist heart to it.
Right. And yeah, I feel like it presents the the ethical trap that capitalism can sometimes be, because you have Cassius. He's in a situation where he sort of, you could argue that he has an ethical responsibility to try to help his uncle, pay the mortgage and not be evicted. But also, like, the job that he has to do to earn the money to do that, may not be ethical in and of itself. And there may not, there isn't always, in the trap that is capitalism, there aren't always ethical options for people who are facing, like, economic ruin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like Worry Free is basically Amazon, right? Like, I know it's like a stand-in for all of capitalism, but right now specifically, it feels like the natural extension of where Amazon would go, right? So there, and then you have Cassius goes to try to get a telemarketing job at this company called Regal View, and they're just like, yeah, we'll hire whoever. You work on commission, it doesn't matter, kind of thing. And can I talk about the Danny Glover? Is
yeah,
that a spoiler
absolutely.
bit?
That's pretty early.
Okay.
I don't think that's super spoilery.
So his like, the person sitting next to him in his little booth is Danny Glover, who is just delightful in this. He's just like an old dude that like has been working class his whole life, that's just like working in this shit job and has like learned a couple of tricks along the way. And he sits there and he tells Cassius that he needs to use his white voice. So he does that thing where he like, it does a really nasally voice, and it's like it sounds like quote unquote, right? Whatever.
Yeah. It's what in real life would be called maybe code switching. But in the film, obviously they exaggerate it, and they actually have white actors.
Well, hold on.
Okay.
So he's like the reason why I think this scene is so good is because he's like the act, like, Cassius just does his quote unquote white voice, and Danny Glover's character, sorry, is like no, you need to, like, it's not just the voice, right? It's not just being more nasally. It's like, you got to be chill. You got no worries. You don't need money. And so as soon as, like, the Cassius recognizes that, he's like, oh, I get it now. And then let's not say who it is, but a voice that you'll recognize comes out of Cassius's mouth. And, like, from then on, the white voice is literally a white man's voice. And it's done so well in this whole film.
What's so hilarious, or was very hilarious to me about that, was when Cassius initially does his, kind of parody of a white voice, it's super nasally, right? And it's the kind of like hack comedian's version of a white voice. And Danny Glover is like, nah, like, you're not getting the depths of what you need to do here. Like, there's some nuance you need to put in it. But then when Cassius proceeds to have, essentially it's like a drunk history episode, right? Where the white voice is coming out of his mouth. The person who they get to do that white voice does in fact have a voice that sounds almost cartoony,
Yes.
I just love that. But one of the things that I loved about the critique of capitalism and capitalist culture and the demands it makes upon people in this film is the way that it asks you to sympathize with and believe with people who are not at your level, right? So you have middle management, working actively against the workers, right? In the service of the bosses and the owners, contrary to their own interests. In this film, which we very much see in real life. And I also loved the way, when you look at the calling floor where Cassius and his friends work, you see all sorts of people, right? It's an incredibly diverse workforce. I think there's a way in which, this film demands that everyone sort of recognize where they are in this capitalist system, right? So people who are old, people who have families, people who are single, for people for whom this is their first job and they will be able to do something else, people for whom this is the only job they could get and, they're thankful to have it, there's just a spectrum and a range of different people who are represented there that I don't think we often get in films that are at least nominally about labor.
Yeah. So can we just go into spoilers? Can we throw up a spoiler warning now? Or do you have something else you want to say? Because I want to just dive into some shit.
Yeah, no, but I just really quick before we do that want to say about because you had mentioned Amazon. I think with the Armie Hammer character, there's a bit of that critique of the fandom around like billionaire CEOs, right? Like I feel like because Armie Hammer in the film, his character is kind of a celebrity, but without us recognizing, like, or the culture in the film recognizing that billionaires like him and Elon Musk and stuff and Jeff Bezos are. Like, they have these fandoms that just hang on their every word and that adore them and worship them. But being a billionaire is itself unethical and contributes to the very problems that people like Cassius and so many Americans are struggling with day in and day out of their lives. So I was glad. I appreciated that aspect of the film as well.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. Francis stole Pee-wee's bike.
Okay, so here's one of my things about this film is that, like, it's a little... They're trying to do so much, and it's really smart, but some of it needed to get cut. And I think that, like, if they had a tighter cut, the film would have felt a little... it wouldn't have felt quite as long for me. Like, I saw the movie twice, and I was not looking forward to seeing it again, even though I can say this is a fucking cool movie and you should see it, right? So I think they do a bunch of shit, like the TV show, I got the shit kicked out of me is a really good parody of like bullshit reality TV. The elevator code where they're putting in like the exclusive elevator is the allure to become a power caller, right? Where that's where you get like the big bucks and you can like, you know, move up the ladder, right? So it's the allure of, you know, if you work hard, you can make it, even though like not everyone can make it. There's literally not enough room in capitalism for there to be a managerial class, right? Or let alone like the capitalist class. I'm using super Marxist bullshit here, but
go for
anyways,
it, girl. Go for it.
But like the code in the elevator was this thing where it's like it's showing the absurdity of the elitism, right? The one of the scenes that I thought like I get why they used it, but I feel like it just was unnecessary was when they went into they're in the bar and then there's the VIP room, right? And you're like, okay, so you're showing like elitism, you're showing exclusivity, you're showing the allure of that kind of thing, but like that scene didn't need to be in the movie.
See, I would argue that it does because I'm blanking on Cassius' friend's name. But when they're in that bar, that's just like a regular schmegular Oakland bar, right? And so the fact that a bar like that has a VIP section, I think is mirrored by the fact that, you know, Regal View has its VIP section. Like, I think the point is, you know, there's this sort of hierarchical nature to human society that sort of no matter where we are, you know, folks are always going to want to separate themselves out. The part of the movie that I found completely, and I loved this movie, so there were only two things, which never happens, that I thought, I didn't need this, or that's fucked up. I did not need the kind of mooning that Stephen Yeun's character was doing over Detroit. Like that whole sort of like romantic subplot I did not need, you know, and actively kind of took me out of the story.
Well, I mean, I feel like with all of that, so here's the thing is I feel like everything in the movie was very smart and very intentional, right? Like I have a lot of admiration for the filmmakers and like what they were doing. It's one of those things where it's like you've got to like kill your babies or whatever, right? You got to make some hard cuts in the editing room in terms of what you can and can't have. I believe the term is
kill your darlings, but yeah.
Right, that's it. Kill your darlings. Drown your babies.
Kill the most adorable little kittens you can find.
Anita is ruthless, Whoa.
But so, like, for example, there was value to that scene, right? It's Detroit. I mean, Cassius is becoming so disconnected from, like, the sort of roots and activist movement and protest that he probably was a part of back in the day when him and Detroit first got together. And so she's being pulled to the allure of this guy who is a union organizer, right? Like, it makes sense that they put it in there, but like, it also just, there's too much shit in this movie. There's just too much.
Yeah. One thing I think was essential that we haven't, a scene we haven't mentioned yet is, so Cassius goes to a party at Army.
That party scene was so fucking long, yo.
Well, okay,
like, holy shit.
But it has element, like the one element about it that I think is so brilliant is like is how it emphasizes like the expectations around race and how as a black man Cassius is very much expected to fill a certain role in the sense that they're sitting around telling stories at one point and And Armie Hammer's character wants him to tell, like, gangster shit style stories.
He says, ever had to bust a cap in anybody's ass? I want to hear about that Oakland gangsta shit.
Yeah.
And immediately you're like, oh.
And then it gets even worse because they want Cassius to rap, and
They
Cassius
demand it.
is not a rapper. He cannot rap at all. And when he starts out, he's just completely bombing because he's not a rapper. He can't rap. But then he figures out how to give them exactly what their expectations are, how to fill exactly what they want, and he does it, and they love it.
They love it. And I was like, you know what? I wonder, like, I was having a very, like, Dave Chappelle moment where I was looking out at that crowd of white faces at the party where they were just, like, vibing so hard, chanting nigga shit, right? And I was like, I wonder how many of those actors actually got into it. You know? And we're just, like, driving home in their Toyota Corollas being like, yo, I love that track.
Oh my God, I hope not. I was watching that being like, oh my God, I would not even want to be a white person acting in this scene right now. Like, that is so uncomfortable and awful and awkward. And, like, I guess somebody's got to do it. But so, okay. So moving towards where it gets real wacky is, they really like Cassius because he made a bunch of money. And he made a bunch of money by selling worry-free's labor to international markets, right? So when you get to be a power caller, you're selling quote-unquote power, so guns and labor. So he's like in Steve Lift's office, the CEO, and he's like, I have a proposition for you, blah, blah, blah. Eventually he finds out that they're literally building horse people. So they're like giving humans a fusion capsule or whatever, a fusing capsule, and turning them into equisapiens. So, like, you get to this scene where, like, Cassius accidentally finds, like, these horse people who are just losing their minds and, like, in a lot of pain and really struggling. And then he gets a proposition to be the like horse, quote unquote, Martin Luther King of these people.
When Steve Lift passed him his proposal on that piece of paper and Cassius opens it up and it's like, hands drop, like, I offer you $100 million. This movie is so funny. Like,
it's good.
I
so
love the
smart.
surreality of it. I love the magical realism of it. I love, like, the hard hitting commentary of it. But I don't want people to think of this as a movie that, like, you have to see to be a good progressive, you know, whatever. Like, this is an enjoyable film. I laughed several times. And one of the hardest times I laughed is I'm in a theater with my fellow Black people, and we are just dying laughing at this movie, right? But at the quiet moments, like when the reveal of the Equisapiens is, so it's dead quiet, and there's just this dude out goes, what the fuck? It was the best.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I love people, you know? It was so good.
Yeah. So, okay. So Cassius is like, this is fucking bonkers batshit banana soup. Like, no way would I do this. And so he's like, oh my God, I can't believe what I've been doing. And he's like, I got to tell someone. And he tries to tell a reporter and doesn't work. So he goes on the reality TV show and, like, exposes this thing. And then I love the montage of the circuit of him doing the talking head pundit thing.
Yeah.
And then the next day, this is one of the smartest parts of this movie too. The next day, like, worry-free stocks skyrocket because people think it's super innovative. It's like when we go to war and then the stock market it goes positive, explodes.
Yeah.
I don't know how to say words.
Capitalism does not care about ethics. Capitalism cares about profit.
Yeah, and so then, like, I just love that, like, this moment of, like, you're not even gonna, that's not gonna do it. Like, just telling people that things are bad doesn't do it. And there's a scene with Squeeze, who's the union guy, and he says, when you show people a problem and don't show them how to solve it, or they don't know how to solve it, they just get used to the problem.
Yes.
And I was like, that was such a good way of, like, a very succinct way of articulating, like, not apathy, because a lot of people care. They just don't know what the fuck to do about it. So you just get used to it, right? And I think that's some of the there's some really smart shit in this movie. Yeah.
Can we talk a bit about Detroit as a character? I want to just go back.
Can we talk about women in general as a character in this movie?
Yeah. So One of the reasons why I felt that her, like, Squeeze crushing on her, them getting together, then, you know, not actually getting together, that whole subplot in the film felt unnecessary to me, and I didn't like it being there, was because when she's positioned as an object of adoration for Squeeze, and when she's, you know, positioned as kind of the long-suffering, fun girlfriend of Cassius, to me, it kind of reduced her to being, you know, purely that, right? Like kind of an object of desire for both of these men, when she's like
she's
like
the activist manic pixie dream girl.
Yeah, like she was so smart and so creative and funny, and I loved her so much, and I felt like so much of what her character was doing was really intelligent, right? But so there's that scene where she's talking to Cassius about her upcoming show, and he's saying that he's not going to come because she said that he didn't need to come, right? And she says, "Don't listen to what I say, listen to what I want." And I was seriously like, nah, you know, like I almost got up and ran at the screen because I was like, this is so contrary to what a woman like Detroit would say. Nah, that's fucked up. Like that's straight up fucked up.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like she was like, I really liked her. And then watching it again, I was like, yeah, she's just there to be like a manic pixie dream girl. Yeah. She's just like the cool, quirky, weird, like kind of activisty chick. Like, you know, she's supposed to be like the conscious of Cassius in some ways, but she's not substantial.
And in the end, she just sort of serves as his like reward for finding, you know, right. His ethics again, right? It's like they're back together, yay! Like, oh, he gets the girl back in the end, because, you know, like that seemed to be her primary function in the story to me, ultimately.
When she walks up and says, "Hey, mastermind," you're just like, oh. Yeah. One thing that I didn't get... Sorry, go ahead, Ebony.
No, I was just going to say, like, she clearly has so much going on, right? Like, we learn that she's a member of Left Eye, and that she's been secretly tagging, you know, various parts of Oakland, right? And doing this kind of, like, guerrilla art. And as much as I would rather chew off my own foot than see a piece of performance art like the piece she did in her gallery opening, I was just like, yo, I'm gonna let this young girl cook. She's a lot younger than me. You know, like, I'm not smoking that much weed anymore. I'm sure this seemed like a good idea. I just felt like, yo, Detroit was one of the more fascinating characters in this film to me. And so when there were those moments when the film, in the service of letting us take another existential dude journey, kind of sidelined her or minimized her, I was like, I resisted it. I just kind of viscerally resisted it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And also the other female character, Debo Cherry, felt so squeezed in. She was the manager in Debauchery, Debo Cherry. She felt squeezed in. At some point, she's like flirting with Cassius. She's like kind of her like his hype man in some ways. I felt like women didn't do great in this film, unfortunately. Also, I didn't understand when he's like, "I'm gonna go back to work at Regal View." Like, you know what I mean? Because I'm like, well. He's, I mean, on the floor where they're... I know, but why would you go back? Like, you know that they're selling labor to Worry Free. Like, why wouldn't you go work at some other telemarketing company?
I wasn't clear about the link between Regal View and the...
Regal View Worry Free is a client of Regal View. Okay. They sell labor. Yeah. Regal View sells labor for...
My understanding was that enough had occurred after the, like, equine uprising such that, you know, like, labor demands had been met, at least for workers at the telemarketing level, on the lower level, such that Cassius felt fine going back there. But I was like, I like you, I didn't understand it. I'm like, I guess there's a lot of shitty jobs people could take if you know it's shitty, you know, go into a different one versus one that's actively encouraging you to sell your soul. And
and because they just fought for labor rights, I guess, at that place.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he you know, he probably doesn't have a whole lot of other options.
Yeah.
You know.
But yeah. Go see this movie. I hope you already saw it because it needed a big opening weekend for bigger and better distribution, but go see it. It's smart, it's fucking hilarious. You have to see it.
Yeah, and it's so quintessentially Oakland. Like, when I came out, I was so glad that Boots Riley was the person who made this movie and made it where he did, because there is a grosser, blander version of this that takes place in like the Midwest. That's an all-white version that's been completely stripped of its racial politics and has like Tom Cruise playing Armie Hammer's role, and like Jake Gyllenhaal plays Cassius Green's role, and like T.J. Miller is in it. Like there's an alternate universe version of this film that's so much shittier. So go see the one that exists. That's great.
I'm so mad at Ebony for like putting that in your brain now. Yeah. What's your dealy freak out deal, freak deal, freak deal. What's your dealy freak out deal, freak deal, freak deal. All right, who wants to go first? Oh, Carolyn, you haven't been on with us for a while. You got 2 weeks worth of freakouts.
Well, sure.
This better be a good one.
All right, so my freak out is a Norwegian film called from last year called Thelma.
Oh my God. My Norwegian friends have been losing their minds over this movie and have been like, you have to see this.
You should watch it.
Okay, sorry.
So on our podcast Cinema Ball, Ebony and I talked about a film called Louder Than Bombs, which is an English language film directed by Joachim Trier. Joachim Trier is a Norwegian director, though, and he last year released this Norwegian film called Thelma. And Thelma is a family drama / teen love story / supernatural thriller. Of course, it's one of those. But what is so interesting about this film to me is, so it's about a young woman named Thelma who goes away to university. She starts falling in love with a female student, one of her, another student at the school, and all kinds of really weird shit starts to happen. But what the film is really, in my mind, about, but it's a very entertaining, very watchable film. But it's really, in a lot of ways, about how women often internalize a sense that that they shouldn't live their own desires or pursue their own desires, or that their own feelings about things might be wrong or shameful. And it's so it is, in a sense, in my mind, about sexism and the way we raise, the way that young girls and women are sometimes raised to think about their desires to maybe live their own life versus, maybe what society expects of them, what their parents expect of them, et cetera, et cetera. I'd liken it in some ways to the film The Witch, but I'd say that Thelma is a much more kind of entertaining and watchable film. But I think that both films are about women who are repressed because of religion or patriarchy or family pressure and so on, and who really yearn to live a kind of more liberated existence. But so Thelma's, it's out on, you can rent it on various sites, and I highly recommend it. It's super interesting.
Awesome. Ebony, what's your freak out this week?
My freak out this week is actually a Twitter thread that I will link folks to in the show description. So recently, Chicago police murdered a black man. He was shot in the back. The explanation was that because, to my mind, they did not have the time to plant a weapon on him, that he was, quote, behaving like an armed person. So this guy was straight up murdered. And so there were various protest actions that occurred in Chicago this past weekend. And as always happens when Black people come out and engage in civil protest about the extrajudicial murder of Black people by law enforcement, the crowd of trolls everywhere raises their voices to say, what about Black on Black crime? Like, you can set your watch by it. So this Twitter thread that I'm going to link people to is this beautiful, succinct kind of response to that instinct for people to say, what about black on black crime? And the Twitter thread is from a writer and professor named Eve Ewing, who is just an amazing poet, an amazing instructor. Her Twitter handle is Wikipedia Brown. She's amazing. But I just wanted to read like the first couple of tweets in the thread. And again, I'll link you to it. People say, why do you only care when police kill people, but not when black people kill each other? Most of those peoples are trolls, but in case anyone has this question in good faith, I'll humor you and address it quickly. 1, you don't know what people in Chicago do every day to fight intra-community gun violence. You know nothing about it. You don't know about the work we do in education, community mental health, mentorship, or other long-term comprehensive efforts. Educate yourself. Just the idea that people in bad faith are suggesting that no one cares about the killing of black folks unless it's by law enforcement is so wildly incorrect. It comes from people who don't live in communities where this happens, whose lives themselves are not in danger. And so I just love the way Eve takes the time to educate people about what's actually at stake here, who's actually getting involved in trying to solve these problems, etc. So that's what I'm freaking out about. Just like badass feminist activists like Eve Ewing just doing the damn thing. I can't say enough about her.
That is a great segue into my freak out, which is I got to see Blind Spotting early, which I feel really lucky about. What?
Humble brag.
Oh, yeah, fully. This full brag. I'm super stoked.
Straight up brag.
It's really, really, really good. And I feel like I want everyone to see this movie. And I really want to urge the folks who are living in, I think the first 5 cities it's coming out in are SF Oakland, LA, Chicago, New York, and somewhere else. And if you live in those cities, please go see it this weekend. The way that this bullshit works is that like it's a small scale distribution just to see if people are interested in it. And then the distributor, in this case is Lionsgate, will do a much wider distribution. Sorry to Bother You was the same way. And I think that both of these films, but now that I'm talking about Blind Spotting, is so fucking good. So important and so good. I really, really want it to get the wide scale attention that it deserves. So please go see this movie. It's written by and stars Debbie Diggs, who you probably know from Hamilton, and Raphael Cazal, I don't know how to say his last name. Sorry. They wrote a fucking brilliant screenplay. They wrote it 10 years ago, and it's super relevant today. It is about being from Oakland, living in Oakland, seeing gentrification, struggling, being working class, police violence against black folks. Like, it's got a lot of stuff in it. And one thing that I think is so great is that they do the combination of humor and seriousness, like extreme comedy and extreme seriousness all at the same time in a really, really synchronous way, which I think can sometimes be hard to match. It's just really good. I don't want to say too much about it. I highly recommend it. We're going to talk about it on an upcoming episode, so we'll dive into it more. But please go see it this weekend if you have the opportunity. Phil Circus was not in it. I don't know why.
The unofficial mayor of Oakland. Oakland?
Actually, hilarious that you say that, because the event I went to, like, the mayor of Oakland came to that event.
And it was Phil Circus, our producer?
It was totally.
I'm telling you, listen.
The thing is,
I will want to hear from our producer. This dude knows everybody in Oakland. If you mention any name, I defy you. Like, I would put money on the fact that you can name any person in Oakland, and Phil will like pull a picture off his camera phone and be like, "Oh yeah, this is me at their son's bris." It's ridiculous.
It's definitely happened. Phil's definitely done that. But the other thing I want to say too is that, like, it's really weird that Sorry to Bother You and Blind Spotting are coming out back to back, that they're both deeply Oakland movies. They're by folks from Oakland, about Oakland. But that's where this is one of, like, Kamau tweeted something recently about that, where it's like, that's where the similarities end. They're 2 totally different movies. Go see both of them. I hope that they don't get overshadowed, right? Or that, like, Sorry to Bother You doesn't overshadow this film. So please go see it. Tell all your friends to see it. Drag them out to the theaters. I don't say this very often, so I really mean it. You can catch us back here every single Wednesday. In upcoming shows, we're going to be talking about Blind Spotting, Pose, and Mission Impossible Fallout. I know you're the most excited for that last one.
That was the thing I was most excited about until I learned about Shaq Week, which is Shaquille O'Neal doing special shows during Shark Week is now the thing I'm obsessed with.
Sure. Well, we'll talk about that too. It'll be great. Remember that you too can join our podcast community and really help us keep making this show by going to d.rip/femfreak and, donating just a little something. We got perks and shit, so go check it out. If you are enjoying the show, please rate and review us on iTunes and tell your friends too. Where are your friends this week? They're in Oakland, obviously. You're kicking in Oakland. Maybe you're going to see Blind Spotting at the Grand Lake Theater, which is a lovely theater. And before the movie starts, be like, yo, they're going to talk about this on Feminist Frequency Radio, so we should tune in and subscribe and back their thing. Okay. That is a horrible conversation right there. It's the kind of conversations I have. What are you trying to say? You can check out all of our work and our other podcasts at feministfrequency.com. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at FemFreak to stay up to date on all the news. And you can find us individually at Carolyn.
I am at Carolyn Michelle.
Ebony.
I am at Army Hammer Face Blindness.
I'm at Anita Sarkeesian. Our producer is Phil Serkis, the mayor of Oakland, who also composed our theme music. We'll see y'all next week.
Peace out.
Bye.